many media outlets, the story commenced in Italy, but the life of one of the protagonists began in Albania, specifically in Tirana, where Sibora Gagani was born on September 14, 1991. Sibora spent her early years in the Combinati neighborhood with her parents and siblings. Her father's name remains undisclosed, while her mother is Elisabetta Shani. The exact timing of the parents' separation is unclear, but soon after Elisabetta moved with her children to Nettuno, a town on the Lazio coast, within the metropolitan area of Rome in central western Italy. There, she dedicated herself to raising her children with hard work and perseverance. Sibora was a vibrant young woman who stood out among her peers for her cheerful disposition. Many classmates and friends affectionately called her Sibi. With her strikingly dark complexion, tall and slender figure, and a beautiful head of hair, she exuded a lively personality and contagious energy. She enjoyed socializing, attending parties, and listening to loud music. As her mother later revealed, Sibora had a deep affection for children and aspired to become a teacher, though modeling also intrigued her. According to some sources, her initial foray into modeling began with a regional beauty pageant, which served as a stepping stone to the Miss Italy competition. Details on her participation in the latter remain unclear, but this experience may have opened doors in the modeling world. Despite these opportunities, family responsibilities led Sibora to work as a waitress in a restaurant, where she quickly endeared herself to everyone. The restaurant owner even gave her the nickname Butterfly, reflecting her vibrant and engaging presence. Fate, however, had other plans for Sibora. At the age of 18, she met Marco, a tall, handsome, and charming 31-year-old man. Although only confirmed to have at least one sister and to have been married previously, Marco's influence would profoundly alter Sibora's life. Marco, who had a sister and had previously been married, was divorced by the time he met Sibora. Some reviews indicate that he had some training in the hospitality industry but lacked stable employment. Despite this, Sibora fell deeply in love with him, and it is almost certain that she was unaware of the darker aspects of Marco's past. Marco was notably secretive about his personal life, and it was only later that details emerged from those close to him. It was revealed that Marco had left Nettuno to settle on the Canary island of Fuerteventura several years earlier. This move was not motivated by a desire for new horizons, but rather an attempt to escape his past actions. According to people in his inner circle, local police were familiar with his history of violent behavior and drug problems. Upon his return from Fuerteventura, Marco met Sibora, and shortly thereafter they became a couple and moved in together in the Critero area of Nettuno. About a year into their relationship, the couple informed Sibora's family of their decision to relocate to Spain. Marco claimed that there were insufficient job opportunities for him in Italy, so they decided to move to Torremolinos, where he had previously lived and worked. Torremolinos is a municipality in the province of Malaga, Andalusia, situated on the Costa del Sol. It is a popular tourist destination, attracting visitors from around the world, including Germans, French, English, Irish, and English Scandinavians. Although Elisabetta was apprehensive about her young daughter moving abroad with a man she had known for only a few years, Sibora was of legal age, and despite objections, the couple proceeded with their plan. Upon arriving in Torremolinos in 2011, they settled in the Carihuela beach area, which offered numerous job opportunities with many restaurants, soda fountains, and beachside chiringuitos, small eateries offering food and drinks. Initially, the couple appeared to be happy, with Sibora maintaining close daily contact with her mother through phone calls and social networks, where they were seen together and happy. Sibora soon found work as a waitress in a local restaurant, while Marco secured a position as a cook in Pizza Chen. However, it soon became apparent that the issue was not the lack of job opportunities in Italy, but rather their difficulty in retaining employment. In Spain, Marco's inability to sustain a job continued to be a problem, further complicating their situation. Marco's true nature began to reveal itself, and arguments fueled by baseless jealousy between him and Sibora became increasingly frequent. Elisabetta witnessed this firsthand during a visit to the couple, where she observed the deteriorating state of their relationship. The jealous quarrels were bitter, and even occurred in front of her. Over the following months, Sibora returned to Italy several times, and some sources suggest that she was only present in Spain during the holiday seasons. This might have been influenced by the fact that Sibora's residence permit in Spain had expired, leading her to use a false Italian document under the name Simona Ferrone to travel. Many people in Torremolinos knew her by this alias. When the couple was nearing their third anniversary at the end of 2013, Sibora returned to her mother's house and confided that she had left Marco and did not intend to return, as their situation was not improving. However, shortly after, Marco appeared at the family home, promising that everything would change. He proposed to Sibora, and despite her reservations, she agreed to give the relationship another chance. Unfortunately, the issues of jealousy and violence resurfaced, as Elisabetta recalled. Sibora began to fear for her safety and confided in her mother that if she wanted to leave Marco, she would need to disappear because he would not leave her alone. In June 2014, the relationship between Sibora and Marco seemed to have reached its end. Sibora moved out of their shared home to an apartment on Calhoyo in Torremolinos. Once settled, she informed her mother that she had ended her relationship with Marco for good and felt liberated. However, things took a troubling turn when Marco called Elisabetta in early July, inquiring if Sibora had returned to Italy. Elisabetta, surprised by the call, asked what had happened. Marco claimed that they had had a severe argument 2 days prior, after which Sibora had left the house, abandoning all her belongings. Elisabetta was skeptical of this story, as it had been a month since Sibora had notified her of the move. It was clear that Marco's account did not align with the timeline Sibora had previously shared. Marco's story evolved further, heightening Elisabetta's distress. He informed her of a new version of events, claiming that a caretaker at their residence had seen Sibora leaving with 2 suitcases, taking all her belongings and departing without revealing her destination. This new account contradicted Marco's earlier statements that Sibora had left behind everything and had not disclosed her whereabouts. Elisabetta, who had not heard from her daughter for some time, clung to the hope that Sibora was indeed implementing her plan to leave Marco and disappear. However, the situation grew increasingly alarming. The family waited anxiously for Sibora to make contact, but the days passed without any word from her. The last communication from Sibora was a WhatsApp message on July 7, 2014. After that, her phone was disconnected, and there was no further activity on her social media accounts. Marco, despite his apparent concern, did not immediately report Sibora's disappearance to the authorities. Instead, he traveled to Italy to visit Sibora's family, where he shared a coffee with Elisabetta and expressed his disbelief at her sudden departure. He confided in Elisabetta and Atlis, Sibora's brother, that he could not fathom why she had left without explanation and had no clue about her whereabouts. During this visit, Marco suggested that Sibora had been seen boarding a bus and had possibly traveled to Argentina, even claiming she was spotted walking with a man and involved in a dispute with him. Despite these claims, Marco did not take the logical step of reporting his partner's disappearance to the authorities. Instead, it was Sibora's mother who eventually filed a missing persons report, including her suspicion that Marco might be involved in her disappearance. The police began their investigation, questioning Marco as the last person known to have seen Sibora. Marco repeated his account, while the authorities confirmed that Sibora and Marco had separated. Though it seemed they were still in contact, the investigation revealed that Sibora's personal belongings were still at the residence, and her employers and acquaintances were questioned. Unfortunately, none of them could provide information about her whereabouts. The disconcerting situation continued into the following months. In 2015, to broaden the search for Sibora nationwide, the authorities enlisted the help of an association dedicated to disseminating information and images of missing persons, those whose families have no information about their whereabouts. Unfortunately, this effort yielded no results for Sibora's family. Despite this, Elisabetta refused to give up. She ensured that Italian media also spread information about Sibora, and according to some sources, the campaign in Italy was even more intense than in Spain. Despite the fact that Sibora had disappeared there, during the period with no news of her daughter, Elisabetta reported that Marco's parents were actively supporting his version of events. By 2017, 3 years had passed without any sign of their daughter. Marco's mother visited the restaurant where Elisabetta was working and claimed to have seen Sibora at a post office in Spain. Shortly after, she alleged that Sibora had been spotted in Naples and later in Portugal. As time went on, life continued for everyone with notable differences. Sibora's family remained anxious and clung to the increasingly faint hope of her return. Meanwhile, Marco's life progressed, albeit with persistent bad habits. He changed his appearance, shaving his head and growing a beard, and entered 2 relationships where the women eventually reported him to the biogen system. This comprehensive system, established in July 2007, aims to consolidate information on gender violence cases, follow up on complaints, and provide protection to victims and their children. In one case against Marco, a restraining order was issued to protect one of his former partners. Despite his ongoing issues, Marco maintained a facade of normalcy in the Cariuola area, where he was known to greet neighbors with a smile. He was a fan of the gym, target shooting, and sports such as baseball and martial arts. By 2023, 9 years had passed since Sibora's disappearance. Marco had a new partner, a woman named Paula. While Paula's last name was not disclosed in the media, it was known that she had been in a stable relationship before Marco and had a daughter and a son from that previous relationship. Paula, who had previously been in a relationship with a partner, experienced an abusive relationship and was registered as a victim of abuse in the biogen system. After her breakup and subsequent move-in with Marco, she gave birth to a child they both shared. Despite her efforts, Paula's history of abuse remained a significant part of her life. One aspect that remained constant in Marco's life was his job instability. Over the years, he had worked in several positions, including at a pizzeria where he befriended Victor Molina, the owner of 2 restaurants, America Bar and El Chiringuito La Tombola. Victor also owned an apartment located directly above the bar. One day, Marco approached Victor for a job, explaining that he had been unemployed for some time and that his family was struggling. Victor, willing to help, offered Marco and Paula employment at El Shiring Uito, where Victor's sister Victoria was also working. Additionally, Victor rented them the apartment above America Bar. While Paula proved to be an excellent worker, Marco's performance was problematic. The situation reached a breaking point when Victoria arrived at El Chiringuito and found the door to the workers' bathroom completely destroyed. Marco had smashed the door, claiming that Paula was hiding there to have intimate relations with co-workers. This incident led Victor to reassign Marco to work directly under him at America Bar, while Paula continued her work at El Chiringuito. Victoria became aware not only of the deteriorating relationship between Marco and Paula, but also of the serious issues within it. She learned that Marco had physically assaulted Paula. Victoria and the other employers urged Paula to report Marco to the authorities, warning her that with his background, he was likely to end up in jail. Victoria even offered to accompany Paula to make the report. Paula, however, attempted to downplay the severity of the situation by explaining that Marco had only inflicted 4 punches and a kick. Despite the unusual nature of this explanation, there was a deeper reason behind Paula's decision to remain with Marco. She revealed that social services had previously removed her children from her care after discovering drugs in her home that belonged to Marco. Paula confessed that she wished to separate from Marco, with whom she claimed she had not been in a relationship for some time. However, she faced financial constraints and felt the need to maintain the appearance of a stable relationship to regain custody of her children. Paula was working diligently to achieve this goal with a steady job. She anticipated being able to save enough money to rent a house for her children and eventually separate from Marco. For several months, Paula had been undergoing weekly toxicology tests at a facility to demonstrate that she was drug-free. She hoped to have her children returned to her by October of that year. Meanwhile, Marco's performance at work continued to deteriorate. After just a month and a half, Victor discovered that a .30 semi-knife with a black handle and yellow trim was missing from the kitchen. He reported the theft to the authorities, and soon after, he dismissed Marco. With Marco's dismissal, Paula was looking forward to a more promising future. On Tuesday, May 16, 2023, she was excited for her day off and had plans for the evening. She intended to attend a social gathering with some of her co-workers and, according to some reports, had a date with a local employee, potentially starting a new relationship. Victoria later recounted that Paula had purchased a beautiful white dress and new shoes for the occasion. She looked radiant as she grabbed her purse and left the house, eager for the evening ahead. Her purse in hand, Paula left the house, unaware that this would be the last time Victoria would see her. The next day, Wednesday, May 17, 2023, Victoria was eagerly awaiting Paula's arrival for her shift at work, curious to hear about her night. However, Paula was still at home, preparing to leave for work. At 11:30 in the morning, the bar at America began to resonate with alarming screams coming from Marco and Paula's apartment. While the couple was known for frequent arguments, the tone of Paula's screams was different, this time desperate and desperate. Victor, the bar's owner, and an employee hurried to the apartment, knocking on the door and calling out to Paula to check if she was all right. One of them thought they heard faint moans in the background. Moments later, Marco's voice was heard, assuring them that everything was fine and that Paula had gone to bed. The expected response from Paula was no longer audible. The door remained shut, and Marco's tone raised concerns among the men. Victor quickly went to retrieve a copy of the apartment keys from his own place, while the employee went to get his phone to call the police. As they left, Marco emerged from the apartment, appearing calm as he exited the premises. Minutes later, police and medical personnel arrived on the scene. After knocking on the door once more and receiving no answer, the apartment owner unlocked it. Inside, they found a scene far worse than they had imagined. Paula's lifeless body lay on the floor, her clothes stained red and her body covered in numerous wounds. According to reports, the knife used in the attack was still embedded in her side. The paramedics could only confirm Paula's death at the scene, and it was soon determined that the alleged attacker was no longer present. Nothing could have been worse. Minutes later, 38 Sanjine Street was taken over by the police and emergency medical teams. The authorities immediately began searching for the alleged perpetrator. According to witness statements, police officers started filling the adjacent streets and surrounding areas of the crime scene. At the same time, Paula's friends and authorities were distributing Marco's photo through social media, asking for the community's help in finding the fugitive. A neighbor identified the man in the photograph at a local store about 500 meters from the crime scene. Less than 6 hours after the crime, at 5:30 that same afternoon, Marco was arrested at a local establishment where he was calmly drinking a beer. The man offered no resistance, and the scene of the arrest attracted the attention of those present and those nearby. Marco was taken to the police station for questioning, while the initial information revealed that Paula had suffered 14 stab wounds and was reportedly attacked from behind. The weapon used in the attack was allegedly a knife taken from the shop where Paula had worked, suggesting possible premeditation. The man in custody had previously been fired from another job due to drug use. As the investigation continued, the community of La Carihuela was in shock, as such events were not expected in the area. That same day, the municipality of Torremolinos declared a day of official mourning, with flags at public buildings flown at half-mast. The following day, a minute of silence was observed at the town hall gates. In the days that followed, new details emerged about Marco's machinations. For instance, it was revealed that on the night Paula went out, Marco had been searching for her, and had even asked local taxi drivers to help him find out who had taken her, who had driven her, and where the woman had gone was just the tip of the iceberg. The surprises were far from over when Marco's arrest for the crime against his partner was revealed. At that moment, Marco's mother, who had been grieving for many years, was struck once again by the painful reality of her son's actions. As Marco was being taken away by officers at the police headquarters, he stood in front of a billboard displaying images related to ongoing investigations, including a poster for the disappearance of Sibora Gagani, which had been open for 9 years. Upon seeing the poster, Marco dropped a bombshell stating that he wanted to cooperate because it had always haunted him. He confessed that he and Sibora had had an argument during which he had gone too far, resulting in her death. He admitted to burying her body within a wall of the house where they had lived. Despite this shocking confession, the officials were not prepared to address it immediately and focused on the current case. On Saturday, May 20th, Marco, now 45 years old, appeared before the Court of Instruction No. 3 in Torremolinos. He invoked his right to remain silent and only responded to questions from his defense lawyer, who requested psychiatric and toxicological evaluations concerning Paula's crime. During this appearance, Marco made no further comments about his revelation. The court ordered his detention without bail for the murder charge related to gender violence and mandated a drug addiction protocol. Additionally, proceedings were opened against Marco for the disappearance of Sibora Gagani, and investigators set out to verify the truth of his statements. To determine the accuracy of the man's statements at the police station, a massive operation was launched. On Monday, May 22nd, officers conducted their first search of what had been Marco and Sibora's residence. Located in a small building on Garcia de la Siena Road in the El Calvario neighborhood, the apartment was now occupied by another couple who fully cooperated with the authorities. Specialized teams, including members of the local judicial police brigade, special trained officers from the violent crime unit, and experts from the General Subdelegation of Logistics and Innovation, were involved in the search. They began with a visual inspection to identify any irregularities that might indicate alterations to the apartment's walls or floors, but nothing unusual was found. Subsequent inspections involved the use of densimeters and microcameras, which required drilling small holes to inspect the interior of the walls and floors. Despite these efforts, the tools did not yield any positive results. According to the press, Marco, still in prison, claimed that he had used acid to dispose of his victims' remains. The investigators, undeterred by the lack of results from 3 inspections, proceeded with a 4th attempt. They analyzed the building's blueprints and discovered that the 2 apartments on the same floor were identical. They noted that the investigated apartment had an unusual feature of bedroom space that differed from the twin apartment. With this clue, specialists used X-ray equipment to examine the wall in question. This wall, which had appeared unchanged and consistent with the rest of the building, was suspected to have a hidden cavity. With authorization, on June 6th, the search continued. The officials proceeded to break down the wall, and behind it, they discovered a large chipboard crate. Upon opening it, they found it completely filled with lime. As they began to remove the lime, grim discoveries started to emerge. A plastic bag was found inside the crate, containing a knife with dried blood. Soon after, various objects that seemed to belong to the victim began to surface. Among them was a bouquet of flowers placed on a series of plastic bags, inside of which was a camping sleeping bag. Within the sleeping bag, they uncovered the remains of a woman in a state of saponification. According to the Clinical University of Navarra, saponification is a chemical process that occurs under specific conditions after death. It involves the transformation of the body's adipose tissues into a substance known as adipocere, or cadaveric wax. Contrary to what one might assume, this process helps protect the underlying tissues from decomposition. With the macabre discovery made, the body was transferred to the Malaga Institute of Legal Medicine for an autopsy to confirm the cause of death and to verify whether the remains were indeed those of Sibora. Meanwhile, in Italy, Sibora's family awaited news with bated breath. They had been informed by a friend about Marco's capture for Paula's murder and the ongoing search for Sibora's body. The press in Albania, where Sibora's family resided, reported the developments. Etlis, Sibora's sister, revealed that the family was in turmoil and would not rest until they received answers to the questions that had plagued them for the past 9 years. Etlis had long carried Sibora's name tattooed on her chest, and had always believed her sister was dead somewhere, though she was unaware of the conflicts between Sibora and Marco, information that their mother had been privy to. Elizabeta, their mother, had previously confided in tears that she could not believe Sibora had simply abandoned them. The news of her daughter's death at Marco's hands came as a harsh blow. Despite the sorrow, Elizabeta found some solace in the joy of becoming a grandmother, a small comfort amid the years of uncertainty and pain. Sibora's father passed away following an illness, leaving Elizabeta to wonder about her daughter's fate. She also requested that the investigations continue, as she was convinced that Marco must have received some form of assistance to seal her daughter's body within the wall. Elizabeta believed that the work was too meticulously done for Marco, who had no knowledge of masonry. Spanish authorities contacted Elizabeta to request a DNA sample to confirm with certainty that the walled-up remains were her daughter's. There was a high degree of certainty, as the remains bore tattoos that matched distinctive marks associated with Sibora. A Spanish team visited Elizabeta's home to collect a saliva sample, and the DNA comparison conclusively confirmed that the body was indeed that of Sibora Gagani, who had disappeared at the age of 22 and would have been 31 years old at that time. The autopsy revealed that despite the advanced state of decomposition, the cause of death was multiple stab wounds. Following this confirmation, Sibora's family became involved in the legal proceedings with the assistance of lawyer Juan Manuel Medina from the SOS Desaparecidos Association. The media sought responses from the accused relatives, who had been dubbed the Monster of Torremolinos by the press. However, Marco's father declined to comment, expressing his dismay over his son's monstrous actions. Testimonies from Marco's sister, Paula's second victim, described how Marco had verbally abused and physically assaulted her sister, calling her a bad mother. She also mentioned receiving messages from Paula's daughter, who reported that Marco had frequently assaulted her mother and had even sat at the foot of Paula's bed at night with a sharp object in hand. More than 5 months after the discovery of Sibora's remains in the wall of the apartment she had shared with Marco, her relatives announced that she would be returning home after 9 years of uncertainty and months of anguish. Elizabeta traveled to Spain to receive her daughter's remains and return them to Italy. Sibora's family and friends were finally able to say their final goodbyes at a funeral service held at the shrine of Our Shrine Lady of Grace in Neptune. At the end of the service, friends of the young woman released balloons into the sky, each carrying messages written in her memory. Sibora, who had been a cheerful, kind friend with dreams of becoming a model and finding happiness, was remembered fondly. After enduring one of the hardest moments a family can go through, all efforts were now focused on ensuring that justice was served, and that the person responsible for Sibora's untimely death was punished to the fullest extent of the law. On Tuesday, January 30th, 2024, Marco testified in court during a hearing requested by Sibora's lawyer. In reality, Marco submitted a 17-page handwritten letter in which he confessed to being responsible for Paula's death. In his letter, Marco described a troubled relationship with Paula, marked by heavy alcohol and cocaine use. He claimed Paula was angry because he owed her $50 and had been unfaithful to her. Marco admitted that his mistake had been defending himself too forcefully, though he did not clarify how. If the attack was self-defense, Paula's wounds were on her back. His confession, however, did not extend to the case of Sibora. He claimed that he had only placed Sibora's body in bags, put it in a wooden crate, covered it with lime, and constructed a false wall to conceal it. He maintained that he did not kill Sibora, despite expressing regret for the disgusting act and acknowledging that he had experienced a profound sense of closeness to God while in prison. Regarding Paula's case, Marco described a fierce argument that escalated into a struggle, during which he admitted to grabbing her by the neck and throwing her to the floor. He described grabbing her by the neck and throwing her to the floor, at which point she screamed for help. After that, his memory was unclear. He only recalled panicking and fleeing the scene, adding that he was under the influence of drugs at the time. In his letter, Marco also apologized to the judge for having previously lied about his innocence in Sibora's case. During the hearing, Marco presented a convoluted explanation, alleging that members of the Albanian mafia were responsible for the crime. According to Marco, these dangerous individuals had lent him €25,000 to start a business, a brothel. However, he claimed that Colombians had stolen the money during a night of partying, leaving him without funds. When the Albanian gangsters came to collect the debt, one of them held a gun to him while the others confronted Sibora, putting her against the wall. Marco alleged that during the heated argument, one of the gangsters killed Sibora. He claimed that the gangsters also stole €9,000 from his drug retail business and demanded that he dispose of Sibora's body in exchange for the remainder of the debt. Marco asserted that he spent 2 days with Sibora's body, unsure of what to do, before ultimately deciding to wall it up. Juan Manuel Medina, the lawyer for Sibora's family, dismissed Marco's account as absurd and implausible, describing it as unsupported by evidence. Medina characterized Marco as a textbook psychopath and noted that, given Marco's history of living in at least 4 different cities, there could be more unsolved cases involving other victims. As of the time this video was made, the fate of Marco Cayo Romeo remains unknown. The latest information, dated May 16, 2024, outlines that Court Number 3 of Torremolinos has decided to proceed with the case against Marco for the murder and mistreatment of Paula, scheduling the trial to begin on June 4, 2024. There is no available information regarding the estimated date for the judicial process related to the case of Sibora Gagani. It remains unknown how many women might have been abused by Marco or if there were additional fatalities. We only know that at least 2 of his partners may have potentially escaped harm by reporting his abuse. Victoria, Paula's boss and friend, expressed regret to the press for not pressuring Paula more to report Marco. With the 2 prior accusations, it was expected that Marco would have been imprisoned and Paula might still be alive. However, neither Sibora nor Paula ever chose to report him. During the investigation, we came across an account of another woman who might have escaped from Marco. In an interview with Marco's ex-partner, identified as Eva, who had been a friend of Sibora's, it was revealed that Eva, after Sibora's disappearance, suspected Marco had returned to Italy and entered into a relationship with her. Eva's account indicated that her life was also affected by Marco. She described him as initially polite and normal but eventually very jealous and somewhat aggressive, which led her to leave him. When asked if Marco had assaulted her, she did not respond directly. Following Paula's fatal aggression, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez condemned the incident, emphasizing that it should not be seen as just another episode but as the tragic loss of one more woman to male violence. At the time of the incident, Paula was one of 6,179 persistent aggressors in Spain. Of these, over 51,000 individuals had 2 victims each, and 2,155 had more than 3 victims. Studies indicate that the risk level for women entering relationships with men who have a history of abuse is extremely high. Experience shows that with each new partner, the aggressions are likely to become greater and more dangerous. Statistics reveal that only 30% of cases of gender violence are reported. We do not wish to fall into the trap of blaming victims for fearing their aggressors and remaining silent, as the situation is far more complex than it might appear. As we have seen on this channel, there are many instances where perpetrators of violence have been reported, yet the response has been insufficient or ineffective, resulting in minimal penalties. Unfortunately, the tragic outcomes often remain the same. Well, dear audience, here is another investigation. What do you think of today's case? We would love to read your comments, as your opinions on these cases are very important to us. Always remember to express them with the utmost respect for the victim, other viewers, and us. Before you leave, please subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to share this video if you think someone you know might be interested. See you in our next criminal investigation. Goodbye.